Welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Chi Life podcast. So I have a very special guest for our first guest on the podcast. This is Ajay Agrahari. He's a software engineer and also a yoga teacher. And you might be wondering what I'm doing interviewing a yoga teacher for the very first episode of the Chi Life podcast. Well, if you've been following the vlog, the Chi Life vlog, which has been running for quite some time before the podcast, you probably know a little bit about the sort of things I've talked about on the vlog. And often a lot of that has been particularly about Qigong and different pieces of theory about Qigong and things like that. But Qi is something that is very broad, very general. It means our life energy and the energy that flows through life. And there's lots of different ways that we can work with our energy. It's not like just Qigong is the only way. And so yoga is another practice that works with our energy. And so as we move into the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing lots of interesting people who do lots of interesting different things that relate to working with our energy and the energy that we experience in life. And there's a lot of similarities, I think, but in many ways between yoga and Qigong. One of the analogies I often use when I'm explaining to people about Qigong is I compare yoga to Indian food and Qigong to Chinese food. And they're both food, and they both do good things for us. And they taste a little bit different, and they look a bit different, but there's also a lot of similarities there as well. And so I think it's fascinating to talk about some of those things and the way that the energy affects our lives and so on. So one of the reasons why I'm interviewing AJ is because I think he has quite an interesting perspective on yoga, because he grew up in India. And so yoga was something that was around him in a cultural context. And then in his adult life, he moved to New Zealand. And coming to New Zealand, and he's also lived in some other Western countries as well. Canada as well. He's had an opportunity to see a different perspective on yoga. And as part of that, he's developed in his own yoga journey. And so I think there's something interesting to learn from that. So I've talked enough introducing this, I think. So AJ, do you want to, you feel free if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, anything like that. But otherwise, we'll start talking about maybe your experience with yoga.
Thank you, John. Namaste and kia ora, everyone. So I'm Ajay Agrahari, and thank you for the introduction. So I work, as John mentioned, that I work as a software engineer. I have been teaching yoga from last 4-5 years here in New Zealand, and teaching yoga is something which I do for offering something back to community.
And in fact, a lot of the classes you actually teach in this room that we're in right now.
Oh yeah, that's so true.
It's quite cool.
Yeah, and so that's me. That's
you.
Yeah, that's my
that's you.
history.
Yeah. Well, look, I think if we start from early on. So you grew up in India. How old were you when you left India?
So I grew up in a town. It was like a town and village both. So I grew up in a village side, and it's on the border of India and Nepal.
Okay, so
Yeah.
right up in the north.
Yeah, it's a very countryside village, and what was your question?
How old were you when you left India?
Yeah, so I lived in my hometown till I was 16.
Oh, so you left as a teenager?
Yeah, I left as a, yeah.
Oh, wow. And what was it that you left for when you left India?
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't leave India.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't leave India at that age. I left my hometown at 16.
Yeah.
And then I went to a city.
Yeah.
And 2 years, I pretty much did nothing. Just living in the city and traveling here and there and couch surfing at some friends' places. And after 2 years, I joined uni, and then 4 years in a uni. But my university, the campus, was also in a very remote area, like there was nothing than the university campus. And yeah, I think I worked few years in India, then I went to Canada.
Okay.
So I would say I was already 26 or 7.
So you're mid-20s. So right
Yeah.
up until your mid-20s,
Yeah.
you lived in India.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So a whole background living in India. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what your impression of yoga was, or your experience of yoga as you were growing up. What did you know about yoga? What did it mean to you?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. Even sometime I like for me yoga as a kid. So I was very fortunate that we had a school in India, and that school promotes Indian indigenous culture. Basically, they're trying to revive, I would say, Indian indigenous culture, what I think is lost because of the colonization over more than 1,000 years. So there are so many organizations, they are trying to revive that indigenous yoga is part of that indigenous culture. And that time, but I don't think we were told what yoga is. So for us, yoga was something, some days in a school you do sun salutation. So that was yoga. You might do headstand, that's yoga. So that's what we thought, which is asana, just the physical posture. But I don't think we were even told that we are doing yoga.
You're just doing exercise.
Yeah, just exercise. And the term yoga, I would say, was there. We were aware of it, but we were not very sure. I was not very sure what yoga actually means. And yeah, I think when I went to uni, we didn't have. I would say we were not doing any practice which we can say that it was part of yoga practice. Yeah, so it was very westernized education system. We wanted to live very secular. Seculars, even that must like secular in a sense that we were also trying to disassociate ourselves with our own culture, our old culture and our old roots. And yeah, so I think that then yoga became quite popular, especially asana. In I would say l- after maybe after around 2010, 11 sometime.
Okay.
It was getting quite popular, but it was getting popular as a therapy. People were going to yoga classes or yoga camps, doing mostly asana or maybe some pranayama uh, for uh, for some disease.
Right. Okay.
So that's how it kind of started coming back into the mainstream population. And for me, when I came to New Zealand, I came to a yoga class in Kauai Purapura. And after, then people started asking me, about yoga and what's the style. And, uh, and I was not familiar with these terms, like what style of yoga.
Right.
And that was something new for me. So I had to think about, study and try to know what I was doing. And then, yeah, when I got involved more in the practices, I realized there were so many components of it were actually part of our daily life. But we were never told, oh, we are actually practicing yoga. Yeah,
Okay.
in our childhood, there were so many things like mantra chanting, asana, pranayama, meditation, yama and niyama. They all were part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, you just never thought of them. You'd never given them that label of,
Yeah,
I'm doing yoga.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was just something that was part of your
yeah,
life, part of your background.
yeah.
Right. So that's interesting that you're coming into the West and having people ask you questions and then doing a bit of study helped to give you a different perspective on what had been around you all the time when you were growing up.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I guess what new perspectives did that bring for you? Did it make you think a little bit differently about some of the things that you did when you were younger, or
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
yeah, so thinking about it in a different way as you started to put it all together as sort of all parts of yoga, did that give you a different view of some of the things that you were doing when you were younger? Did it help you maybe to appreciate it in a different way?
Yes. So when I got familiar, and when later on I started practicing a bit, and regular practice, I would say, because I was going to classes every day, and at the same time I started studying books, and then I had a shock, which is very personal thing, but I would like to share. It might help some people. So my mother was a patient of schizophrenia, and sometime she would react very aggressive, and you know, throwing stuff or burning stuff. As a kid, I I I don't think I have any trauma from it. That's what I feel, and sometimes I wonder why I don't have that traumatized experience or memory, because even that time it was very, even if it was not normal, but it was something. It didn't, what you call, it didn't stop me from from my journey. Or so I feel that yoga, the practices which we were doing that time, somehow it was helping to go through that situation. And that's the major, that was your question, right? Yeah, I think that's the that's what I realized later on, that oh wow, how it was helping me, and not only me, my brothers, my siblings, my dad, and even my mom, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, you maybe didn't realize the benefit you were getting,
Yeah.
but by looking back, you can see, oh, hey, the different practices were probably really helping you through that difficult situation.
Yeah, that's what I feel. I feel, because it, the level of consciousness, and because we didn't react when she was reacting. And just recently, I went to a first mental health first aid training, and they were saying, when you come into the situation when someone is reacting with anything with the mental health, you don't react, you respond, and not respond, but yes, basically you accept that, okay, this is what is happening. You don't react or try to fix. And we were not reacting or trying to fix anything. We were just being with her. And yeah, somehow that's what I feel, or I believe, that yoga, the yoga practices did, helped us in that way.
Right. So it developed that overall mindset and way of dealing with the world that made it easy to deal with that particular situation.
That's what, if I look back, and that's, I feel that's one of the main benefits, one of the benefits, not main, but one of the benefits which we got with, what you call, we yeah we
You and your family, yeah.
yeah, me and my family, we had from those practices.
Yeah. So you've mentioned, sometimes you'd do sun salutation, sometimes you'd do handstands and things like that when you were at school. What were, looking back now with your perspective on yoga, what were some of the main things that you did, even when you didn't realize it was yoga? What were some of the main things that you did, or do you have any stories about some of the things that you would do growing up?
Yeah, so when we go to school, so it's not from school, it starts from your home. So in the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali, he has the this rishi sage Patanjali has structured yoga in 8 parts.
Yeah.
And the first 2 parts talk about more about personal hygiene or personal morality or ethics. These two, I feel, starts from the your home, our home. And we were told in the school, though, like, this is what you have to do. You have to be very grateful to your, parents. They are working hard to make sure that you get educated, and they're taking care of you. So being grateful towards for their service, being also personally, the personal hygiene, just, and then you come to school, and then they start the half an hour with the mantra.
So every day you would do mantra for half an hour.
Half an hour.
That's like right from when you were very young.
Yes, like when you
Wow.
were like 3, 4 years old, and
Wow.
yeah.
It's hard to get little kids to concentrate for half an hour sometimes.
I feel if just imagine a 4, 5 years old kid or 6 years old kid doing half an hour anything.
Mm.
And this was the one practice I remember. Everyone was very focused.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, in my memory, I don't have anyone crying or there can be sometime when you're young.
But it wasn't a major thing that you go
No,
like,
no.
oh, there was always a kid
Yeah.
being naughty or something.
No, everyone's sitting together chanting the mantra. So yeah, it was bringing some sense of peace, uh, and yeah,
Maybe it actually helps them to focus better.
yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the start, and then some days we start with some asana, not every day. Some days you do some asana before going to classes, but we also had this relationship with our teachers, and we did not just thought about them, you know, teacher. We also respected them, or gave them a position of a guru.
Okay.
So for us, they were not just only a teacher teaching, a teacher who is teaching a subject,
Right.
a teacher who is guiding us to move forward or to start your journey.
Right. So you're considering them more as a mentor, not just someone who's giving you information, but someone who's actually actively trying to help you on your path.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. So that relationship with the guru and asana sometime and mantra I already mentioned. We were meditating. I don't remember. We were told it's meditation.
Mm.
Yeah.
They told you to sit down and be quiet. Is that?
I think
They do that in Western schools all the time. Sit down and be quiet. They don't know that they're teaching the kids to meditate.
they were guiding us to meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah, like bring your focus on your, this between your eyebrows, your third eye, and yeah, I remember those practices and.
Yeah. Okay. So it was just embedded within your growing up, within
Yeah.
your going to school. So you mentioned the morality and the ethics.
Yeah.
So, and at that stage, you didn't really think of it particularly as yoga, but later on, as you've studied Patanjali's sutras and so on, does it match up? Is it like, is what you were taught about morality, hygiene, and so on, does that match up with what you find in the sutras?
Yeah, because sutras, the thing is, sutras can be interpreted in many different ways.
Yeah.
But we also got opportunity to learn Sanskrit.
Okay.
Yeah. We became, at one stage we were able to, I wouldn't say very fluently communicate.
But you could actually have a kind of a conversation.
Just not very long conversation, but maybe just a small conversation and introduce ourselves. Or writing was better, I would say, than the speaking, because we were not practicing much enough to speak. And it was same with the English. We know how to write English, or maybe read English, not with a good pronunciation, but there was no speakings. So same with the Sanskrit. I think we were good to write and read. So when I think I have read it few times, not many, but maybe two or three times, and I tried to break it just a literal translation. And when I just take as a literal translation, I feel because even I feel that my school also had their own interpretation of
course,
right, and I feel it was very close to what I studied sutras later on in my life.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And do you think your experience, both in terms of what you learned at home before you went to school and then as you went to school, do you think that sort of experience was typical of many people in India, or maybe something that was particularly in your area that you had an experience of having these practices so integrated into your life?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So Definitely few components, not everything, but few components. Is I have I have been to different like few parts of India. What I feel, there were few components which you would find common all everywhere in India. Like it's like practice, whether it's a city or a village or a town. Not everything though. And it has to do more with the colonization actually. There were things lost from the culture, but yeah, there were few things, but yeah, we were just I think this organization, because later when I went to city and when we were talking about, oh, our, about our school, this is what we study, and people were shocked. It's like, how how did you manage to get that school in your village?
Ah,
And this organization was basically, so they were focusing mostly in the rural areas or remote areas,
right.
because that's where there were not good schools.
Yeah.
So they were trying to fill the bridge between rural and urban India.
Okay.
Yes, because urban India you have good schools and everything, so
Yeah. So you maybe had a bit more yoga in your growing up than a lot of other people in India did at that time.
people whom I have met, I feel yes.
Yeah, interesting,
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
I don't want to be a bit.
No, well,
Yeah.
but obviously you get an idea of how,
Yeah, it
the
was
different
different.
education
Yes,
systems in
yeah,
different parts of the country, and
yeah.
it's just how it was, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know there are schools, and they are very famous schools, and very they charge a lot of money. They're private schools, and they focus only on subjects like science or English or mathematics. They don't bother about any other things,
Mm.
because and it's not their fault. I think at some stage parents also want the same thing, right? They don't want to send their kid to learn yoga. I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an interesting thing. And I expect it depends on the parent.
yeah.
Because in life, of course, we all have to balance, well, things that we're interested in,
Yeah,
things that we think might be helpful in some way, versus things where it's like, gotta earn an income,
yeah.
gotta be
Yes,
able
yeah,
to
yeah.
have a roof over my head and buy food and support a family, and trying to balance things up. And
Yeah,
I guess it depends, because again, like we were saying, maybe doing that chanting together, maybe it actually helped the kids to focus better.
yes.
So maybe it depends how you actually look at these practices, whether you think they're a distraction or whether you think maybe that would actually help. Maybe that's a real bonus that will actually help with those other things in life.
I, as far I know, from my class, I'm still in touch with some of them,
Yeah.
and they are quite successful in their respective career choices. Someone would be a very successful scientist, someone is a successful entrepreneur, and someone is working for a government, and so someone is a doctor, and like they are quite successful. So
Yeah.
even though we come from a village
Yeah.
where we had this school, but I as for I think in in my knowledge, pretty much all of them are very successful in their career choices.
Right.
Yeah.
So it certainly didn't hold them back.
No, no,
And
no.
maybe it actually helped them to
Yeah,
do better.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing because we see in schools nowadays sometimes, uh, some schools bringing in some things like some meditation or some yoga or even some qigong. Qigong's not so well known,
yeah.
but bringing in some of these practices into the school, because I think it really can help kids in their learning.
Yeah, I go to one school here, and I have been to school in two schools to teach yoga as a and meditation as a part. I think it was the subject was well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we saw the difference. Even the principal noticed the difference
Yeah.
in the students, and principal was very happy, and he wanted to bring yoga and meditation and other things like qigong, and to integrate or add in the as part of well-being subject.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
So, and you've just done this over the last year or two, haven't you? You've been
yeah.
into
Last
some of the
2 years.
schools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last 2 years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you have any other interesting yoga stories from your time in India before we maybe talk about your experience more in New Zealand?
Yoga interesting story as Interesting story, huh? I mean, I
Put you on the
have,
spot.
yeah, I have quite a few, but it's just sometime. One was, I think I feel is funny now for me. So, I mentioned the mantra chanting, right?
Yeah.
We had uh, half an hour in the morning, and just before the lunch, we have another, not half an hour, but maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Some days we would have the longer version of it,
Mm-hmm.
and some days just the shorter version of it, which is just 1 or 2 minutes. And that was most painful time for us because being a kid and you just want to eat your food and then you have to chant mantra for 10 minutes, just sitting, and you have to be in the queue, like you have to sit in the queue facing the other class. So it's like a creating kind of a, not a circle, but it's still you creating that union, like being together, everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone is equal, sitting on the floor, eating your food. And so I remember that's the only thing we cheated. We, I mean, I remember in my memory and all my friends, we, if the mantra was supposed to be completed in 2 minutes, we were able to finish in 20 seconds or 10 seconds.
I think that's often you get something similar in Western societies because a lot of Western societies come from a Christian cultural background that's maybe not so present these days, but certainly historically they come from this Christian background, and one Christian tradition is often to say a prayer or say a blessing before you eat, and boy, those can be fast. Let's just eat.
That's what
So
we
same
did.
sort of thing with the mantra.
Yeah, that's what we did. I think that's where, and that's the only time was. Otherwise, yeah, mantra chanting was always fun, but this one was like, no, you're hungry, you want to play,
Let's get it over
Eat.
with.
Yeah. And one time, I think it was influence of the teachers. So one ritual they told us you have to do. So touching the feet of your parents or your anyone elders whom you respect. It can be your teacher, uh, someone in family, someone in neighborhood whom you respect. And and with my dad, we had very friendly relation in a way that we never had that, oh, he's my father, the hierarchical, we didn't have, we never, yeah, never had this hierarchical relationship. So just imagine touching a feet of a friend would be like, what you're trying to do, and that kind of relation I had with my dad. And in our ritual we were supposed to wake up at 4 a.m. like early morning
Every day? Or was
yeah,
it
we were
once in a
supposed
while?
we were supposed to wake up at 4 a.m. every day,
Okay.
which I didn't follow all the time, maybe, and then touch your parents' feet. So I was like, they don't know that my parents also sleep at 4 a.m.
They don't necessarily want you touching their feet.
Yeah. But given that, that's it's a duty, like, this is what I have to do. And so I'll just sneak in the, my dad's bedroom, touch his feet and run away so he doesn't see me. And which was part of a ritual that you touch someone's feet, you offer this gratitude
Right.
to someone whom you respect, your teacher, your parents. And the other one was to now you go for some exercise in the morning, 4 a.m. And 4 a.m. is dark in the part of India where I grew up, whether it's a summer or winter, it's always dark. Yeah, after 5 it starts getting lighter. And I remember I was going. We have a river in our town, so it's like a kilometer walk from my house to the river. And then I'm walking towards the river, and I'm taking shortcuts. And so there's a cemetery, a big one, quite a big cemetery, graveyards, where we have cemetery. And there was a house, and this lady, old elderly person, was sleeping in my village. People also sleep outside of the house.
Okay.
Yeah, in the summertime.
It's hot.
Yeah, in summertime.
Yeah.
It's nice. And I think she was awake, sitting at her, the what you call folding bed outside,
Okay.
and I think she got scared because I was walking from the cemetery side, and 4 a.m. and then she started, I think, saying something. I think she was just saying, "Oh God, what is this now?"
Thought you were a ghost.
Yeah, something like that. And then I think I greeted her, and then she's like, "You don't sleep? Why you're walking in the early dark?" I said, "Oh no, we have to go to river, do some exercise in the 4 a.m. and stuff." So yeah, that was there were quite a few stories, but it's just yeah, don't. I mean, yeah, it's just on this, what do you call, on the spot.
On the spot. Yeah. That's cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about when you came to New Zealand? So you had a chance to, well, I don't know, maybe in Canada as well, but you had a chance to start to see yoga from a different perspective. Because obviously in the West, we're seeing it from a different perspective. People are asking you different questions. I think you said you became involved more in going to some yoga classes and things like that. How was that experience for you as you started to encounter these Westerners and what they were doing with yoga, and how was that?
For me, I would say, I don't know about others, but for me personally, it was an experience where, because people whom I met in the classes, they were curious. They wanted to know more. And so I was getting so many questions about yoga. And what I found, maybe some Indian people would not like it what I'm going to say, but I feel that's what reality is, and my reality can be different from others' reality. What I felt, the Indian philosophy is more on like a seeking. You are always seeking, finding the truth.
So you're saying that's a core part of Indian philosophy is to be seeking.
Yes, yeah. What I found, people from West, more like how should I put it in a sentence? It's like I felt more people were on the path of seeking than people in India. Especially people who were in practices yoga or meditate, they're practicing yoga, I mean, but yeah, there's definitely so many styles. I felt there was more emphasis on physical posture, which a lot of people still think that yoga is about that physical posture, that gymnast training. uh, but for me it was a actually, yeah, for me, I don't know how to describe this one. Yeah, yeah, it was more like introspection. Us, trying to know, because I maybe I knew few things, but I had no idea how to how to put in words,
Okay.
and how to explain those things. And so, meeting people in the West who are into yoga practices helped me, and their questions and curiosity helped me to be more to have answers. I would say, to know the philosophy a bit more. Yeah, sorry, I think I'm getting confused.
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're saying. It helps you to essentially to format
Yeah.
the knowledge you already had and to make sense of it.
Yes. Yeah.
To dig into your own experience and to put that together into a more structured way, perhaps, which you can explain to other people.
Yes.
But it also helps you to understand it in a different way as well.
Yes.
And I think this is a common experience whenever we have to explain something to someone or if we're teaching someone, is that it actually really helps us to learn as well. Because you have to think about it in a different way to tell someone else or to explain or to show. And that really deepens our knowledge.
Yeah. So, and there were experiences. Actually, I felt there was more awareness about yoga, or more people were more informative, even though if they were following just the one style or one guru or one teacher, still, if you, I don't know about Canada because I don't think I've been to any yoga classes there. But what I notice in New Zealand and Australia both, there are a lot of people, quite aware and quite what you call informative. They know about it, or they're practicing it. And I met my friend. She's from a small town called Tairua in Coromandel, and her mom was reading Upanishad. I have never met anyone in India. I'm talking about not the gurus or those spiritual gurus, people, regular people. I have never met anyone who reads Upanishad in India. So that's the contrast I noticed, and yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was interesting one. So I started going and getting questions, so many questions about yoga and the style.
And I guess this is what probably puts you in a different position from other people, because as we talked about earlier, not everyone in India growing up at the time you were growing up actually necessarily had the same experience of yoga that you did.
Yeah, that.
So you already had a foundation to draw on. I mean, it's one of those things, stereotypical things. He's Indian, he must know about yoga. But a lot of other Indian people might not have known as much. But you had that background of your experiences to, as a foundation to draw from.
Yeah, and that could be one of the reason, because I was going to classes, and one of the teacher, she asked me, "Why don't you become a teacher?" I don't know what she noticed in me, and I was like, "That I'm really bad with being in the spot. I sometime I can't even speak if you put me in the spot, and you're asking me to be a teacher. People are looking at me, and I'm going to instruct them, and." She's like, "No, I think you can be a good teacher. I noticed that you do have a good knowledge and everything." Like, "Oh, thank you. I was not aware of that." And so she asked me. I didn't politely say no, but I said, "Yeah, I'll think about it. I'll think." And then I got more into, I practice what you call. I became regular in practicing. I what I notice, these yoga philosophies, they're quite different from the religions, you know. And quite often what I notice, people would read, let's say, a word karma, right? Karma, right? Which is very well-known word all over the world, karma. But actually understanding the word karma, the context, or not just the literal meaning or some examples, the context. So that's what I notice sometime with some people. And it's not their fault, it's just because the context of any term or any word comes from the land. Just think about it, like if a, if there is any biblical term, right, any term from Bible, and that Bible is written in that part of the land, right? And in modern time, maybe we can literally translate it, but sometimes that, because the context is not there,
You get kind of slightly the wrong idea about
wrong
what it
idea,
means.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get right idea, but you can also get a wrong idea about it, right?
Have the full context.
Context, and that's what I noticed later on.
In terms of
Westerners practicing yoga was, yes, sometimes I felt it's lacking. So, and it's not just here; it's same in India. Even though they are from there, but the context get lost because it's such a old practice, passing generations to generations, and so I started answering a lot of people when people ask, and I in start I couldn't answer because I was like, I don't know. Even if I know, I'm not able to answer you because I don't know how to answer this question.
Yeah.
How to interpret that context in India, and I can translate in a way that you understand it.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was the big challenge, and that's where I started reading, and I started watching few spiritual gurus. Mostly, I think I like Sadhguru.
Yeah, he's an interesting,
He's
entertaining speaker.
entertaining, and Sadhguru, and there are quite a few more. Reading helped a lot because reading was more you can and so then over the time somehow a lot of people started asking me questions actually, and then answering people. And first I have to go back to my place and search, read why this term, why Hindus don't eat cows. Like, oh, because you have to be kind to animals. But yeah, no, I try to go and dig, why, what is the context, what is the reason. And then I felt, and then this teacher asked me again, that why don't you become a teacher? And I was like, yeah, I think it's a good idea, let's. And I was like, I don't know, I want to do some training, but I'm working on Monday to Friday, so I can't. But in Kawaipurapura, they had this weekend mode training, which lasted.
Where they do several weekends. So you do a weekend, and then obviously you can work during the week, and then they do another weekend later on.
And in that way, it lasts for 4 months.
Right.
Because you are doing just in the weekend.
Is it every weekend?
Every weekend, but there was a gap, I think, of 1 weekend.
Okay.
But it's like for 4 months you have every weekend.
Yeah.
Which was a good practice. You practice in the week, you learn, study, and in the weekend, and then you have 5 days to practice, to study, and to read more about it.
Good way to let it soak in.
Yeah, bringing in your practice. So I decided to do that training, and I did, and I'm very happy. And the training was another point when that gave me more answers, because now in training we are formally studying from A to Z, right?
Yeah.
Studying different components, different parts, and that's where I realized, there are so many things which is quite inbuilt in Indian lifestyle, which they are not, even Indian people are not aware that, this is like let's say a thing about, so staple diet in India would be rice, and there is a dish called dal. Dal can be different from east to north to west to south.
Yeah, lots of different types of dal.
Yeah, it can be different, and it can have maybe a different name and slightly different flavor. But the concept is same. Like you need a soupy lentil bean, some
some kind of
protein.
lentil or bean.
Yeah, some for protein, and then
Some of them are spicy, some of them are not so spicy.
yeah. And some of them can be sweeter and buttery, and and then for carb you have rice. Most of the parts of India, they eat rice, and some parts they eat just bread, like a roti, wheat bread, and vegetables with it. And then when you read more about Ayurveda, actually it comes from that kind of a root, when they have, I mean, maybe I'm not saying that this food came from Ayurveda, but Ayurveda has answers for it, for this combination. They talked about it. And I was like, there's so many. So like these small things, like most of Indians, when they start their day, they meditate for a few minutes. They would have a shower. They would have an altar or shrine kind of place in their home, or they would go to temple or somewhere. They would sit in a meditative posture. They would do some rituals. And for me, that's actually, you're meditating. You're trying to connect your true self with a bigger force, which some people call it God or Mother Earth or Mother Nature. Yeah. So you see, there are small things people do, but they're not aware of it, that, this is also part of yoga practices, Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're saying a lot of that came out of the process of structured learning.
Yes.
It helped you to put all the pieces together because it was being presented to you in a structured way.
Yeah.
You're able to put all those pieces together and see how it all fits.
Yeah. That's where I and that also made me, because being colonized in a country where you are made to believe that your culture is inferior, and that's where I wouldn't say I was proud, but I was more like, oh, now I can feel being myself, and that's where, and that's, yeah, that helped me to teach yoga. It's like, well, I can offer something from my land.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
So quite an interesting journey you've had with yoga in your life. It's always been there, but it's developed over time.
Yes.
Um, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about, I guess, what yoga means to you now? What is your experience of yoga now? What role does it play in your life?
Yeah. So you know how, see, from the childhood, the term yoga, we were familiar. There is term yoga, which can be just sun salutation, or so moving from that definition to more like an hour of physical practice, to coming to that, like, oh, there's not just physical practice, there's so many other things all together. And now at this stage, or for me, yoga means it has something to do with seeking. It has to do with seeking. You're trying to find yourself, your true self first, trying to connect with your true self. There's the force within you. And then I'll use the example of the film, the movie Avatar.
Oh, Avatar,
Yeah, Avatar. If
yeah,
you see, so there are blue people, right, in the
yeah.
film, and then there are people who wants to take some natural resources from it. But if you think about, if you not remember, the blue people were connected with every living what do you call living
Yeah, organism.
organism,
Yeah,
right?
the trees
The
and
trees, the
yeah,
roots,
yeah,
and
they had some connection.
they all were interconnected.
Yeah.
And I feel that we had this interconnection, or when we are born, we at that time we have this interconnections. And over that time in this modern lifestyle, we lose that connection. Yoga brings you back to the same state when you are interconnected again with the universe. So it starts with you first, your own force. And in this process, because a lot of people see yoga makes you healthy, it has to, because you can't connect to yourself or anything else when you're not healthy.
Yeah.
Your body, your mind, everything has to be in a not healthy. Healthy is a very scientific term, I would say. Well, I'll say more like being in a natural state. Yeah, so that's what I feel yoga is. It's just brings you closer to yourself, and to the, if you believe there is a force outside. It can be Mother Earth, it can be God, or it can be anything, or it can be nothing. So yeah, you can also find that connections to the other force, to connecting with the trees, plants, animals. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, AJ, for being our first guest on the Chi Life podcast. Those of you, I'm guessing a lot of people will probably be seeing this on the Chi Life YouTube channel. But as I've mentioned, this is also a podcast now. So the audio is going to be available on your favorite podcast platform if you want to just listen to this or to the future episodes as well. I'll put a link in the description below, and you should be able to find it on iTunes and Spotify and all those places like that. But yeah, it's been wonderful to have you as a very first guest on the Chi Life podcast. Ajay teaches classes, as we mentioned, regularly in this room. This room is called the Yoga Shala. You're only seeing a corner of it, of course. It's quite a large space, but you teach on Wednesday and Friday mornings at the moment. If anyone is near this area, we're in Auckland, New Zealand, and you want to come along to a class, it'd be great to see you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. And yeah, all the best for your podcasting journey. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hear and watch other guests as well.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.